A fair warning this time around, we might be dipping a foot, or at least a toe, into spoiler territory. So you've been warned, there may be spoilers ahead for Spider-Man Beyond. As we jump into our Spider-Man Beyond Facts You Need to Know Part 2. Although I will say, if there's any spoilers, they're at least a couple weeks old, so don't worry, nothing too current. Alright, let's swing into it. Number 10, the hospital issue. Do you love horror comics? Well then Beyond even has you covered for that. I know, I wasn't expecting to read this story and become terrified, and yet here we are. The hospital issue of the Beyond story is issue 82 of Amazing Spider-Man. Now, hospitals for me are already creepy, but Saladin Ahmed and Jorge Fornes really make them seem a lot more creepy and horrifying in this issue. After Peter has awakened from his coma, he's still in no shape to return to a life of crime fighting. He is forced to rest in the hospital, but is called into action when he notices patients beginning to mysteriously disappear. It seems as though while Peter is in no state to go toward the Danger has found a way to come to him. Yay! He and MJ must face off against a monster that threatens not just the lives of the patients around Peter Parker, but his own life as well. Number 9, acknowledging and accepting trauma. It seems that part of the reason why Peter and Ben are struggling so much, or what their problems both stem from overall, are their lack of ability or willingness to embrace and accept the grief and recent trauma that has happened in their lives. With Peter, he just went through a whole ordeal with Kindred, who was revealed to be both of the fake children of Gwen Stacy and Norman Osborn, Gabriel and Sarah. Really, these two weren't Gwen or Norman's children, but were created by Harry to mess with both Norman and Peter, who he made to believe that the children were Gwen's and Norman's when they weren't. Thank goodness for that retcon. Thank you. Thank goodness. Harry, being a clone, however, wasn't aware of his original self's plot, and to make amends for what he knew original Harry would have regretted on his deathbed once he found out about this plot, decided to sacrifice himself to help Peter in the fight against the Kindred siblings, allowing Spider-Man to defeat them in the end, but at the cost of his recently returned best friend, Harry Osborn. Classic stuff. Ben, on the other hand, was recently on a path of redemption after becoming the villain known as the Jackal, but seems to have decided to avoid dealing with that trauma by agreeing to allow Beyond to mess with his mind so that he would forget about it ever happening. All in all, I imagine before Ben or Peter can fully recover, they're going to need to address, embrace, and finally process this trauma and grief they're both kind of running from right now. And this is kind of alluded to as well in issue 75, the first issue of the Beyond story. I love doing these lists because I get to go back through these issues and be like, oh man, let's comb through and see the things that have now grown that had little stems at the beginning, and I can see where they started from. It's so cool. Also friends, if you want more lists on Beyond so you know what issues you need to buy, and so you can follow along as it continues to evolve, because hey, this story is not over yet, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Comatose. Beyond is mainly a story that focuses on Ben Reilly, who is taking up the mantle of Spider-Man currently. While Peter is also there, and he and MJ as well as Aunt May still take focus and get time dedicated to them in the story, the reason why you won't be seeing as much of them as Ben and his team over at Beyond is because shortly after the story starts, Peter actually ends up in a coma. Now don't worry, he isn't in a coma for this whole story, and he actually goes on a journey of his own because of this setback, which I'm finding to be quite interesting. But he does end up out of action for a little bit. I actually am very happy with the way they did this, because I was worried that he was going to be in a coma for the whole thing, and I was going to be like, is he going to have some sort of mind journey? But no, he's also having a literal physical journey. And fortunately, Peter being in a coma is how we end up getting the smoking hot team of Aunt May and Doc Ock that I was talking about on part 1 of this list. Peter's state brings comics' hottest couple back together as Aunt May searches for a way to cure Peter and wake him up. Although May ends up abandoning Otto due to his lack of morals, in the end Otto does right by May and Peter, dropping off with the doctor's need to find a cure. So like I said, his time in the coma this time around is short, but it also helps to give Peter something to overcome, as even when he awakes, he is still somewhat out of sorts and needs to focus on his own recovery. Number 7, Animal. The Animal crop top has returned. If you follow me on Twitter, you know I've already been very excited about this. Seriously, I need to get myself one of these crop tops. I love it so much. In one of the latest issues, issue 87 of the ASM series, Peter Parker, while being retrained by Black Cat and Captain America, is told that he is unworthy of his Spider-Man suit. He has to earn it. And so instead he wears a slew of other outfits while sporting his bombastic Bagman mask. One such look features this classic animal crop top, which Peter once said was given to him as a gift from a grad student buddy of his as a gag. This is mentioned when he wears it to Liz and Harry's pool party / housewarming in issue 249 of The Amazing Spider-Man. Sure, the color of the lettering is different compared to that original appearance, but it definitely still seems to be the same style top. Maybe his old one got damaged and he just loved it so much he bought a replacement, but the lettering is obviously a different color. I seriously love this shirt more than I have words for, and to see it reappear here, what history on the page, what style. I can't believe Pete has had it all these years and that it was among the clothes likely Aunt May or MJ packed to bring to him during his stay at the hospital, where he is still feigning and actually recovering when not busy relearning how to swing around on rooftops and of course fight. Number 6. Marcus Momplasir. Who is Marcus Momplasir? He is basically Ben Reilly's eyes and ears when it comes to briefings on missions, what is going on the ground, and also seems to be a contact point for many other folks at Beyond who are involved with the corporate Spider-Man or his romantic partner Janine. Janine in fact has a direct line to Marcus and can call him whenever she is worried about Ben and vice versa. Marcus seems to be mainly loyal to Beyond, although he doesn't seem as morally corrupt as some of the other people who work for that corporation. At least not yet. Also, because he is so close to Beyond, this could mean that he ends up as an experiment instead of an employee, and possibly becomes a villain against his will. On the cover of the future issue number 92, as seen in solicits, it seems as though a future villain who appears to be a hybrid of the Lizard with possibly Morbius's wings could actually be another reptile villain who was once a friendly face for Spider-Man, aka Ben Reilly, based on what he's wearing. And of course that friendly face, it could be Marcus, I don't know. I feel like everyone's gonna become a villain and it's gonna blow my mind. Number 5. Dr. Kafka. Dr. Kafka returns in the Beyond story as Ben's therapist, hired by Beyond themselves to act in such a capacity. She only agrees to join the team because Ben is involved, and she finds him to be quite an interesting prospect when it comes to having a client for therapy. A new series that takes us back to Ben's earlier days as Spider-Man, Ben Reilly Spider-Man, has recently come out in the midst of this story as well, and I would actually recommend that you dive into it, as it also features Dr. Kafka, the original Doctor before she was a clone, because the current Dr. Kafka is actually a clone. Back then, she also attempts to befriend and help Ben Reilly, who is too moody at the time and too hurt to accept her help as a friend or as a therapist, at least initially. Ben Reilly Spider-Man, in my opinion, is also recommended reading if you are jumping into this Beyond story. It focuses heavily on Ben, who is really the main character of the Beyond story as well, and also features Dr. Kafka, who is now becoming a major adversary in the Beyond story. Spoilers, Queen Goblin. Everyone's becoming a villain. That's what I want to happen. All the people that we were there trying to help Ben, and he's gonna have to fight them. It's gonna be a mess. Oh my gosh. Number 4. Janine and MJ team up. Janine and MJ come together at the end of issue 87 of ASM. These two ladies are kind of like parallel versions of one another when it comes to the role that they play as ally, partner, and love interest in their own spiders' lives. Janine Godby is Ben Reilly's redheaded love interest, and Mary Jane is Peter Parker's redheaded love interest. Of course, each woman is so much more than that, and both couldn't have had more different lives, though one thing is for certain, they both have had to overcome a lot of adversity, and neither has really had an easy life. That's a given. So I suppose we shouldn't be surprised that when Janine decides to take action and escape her swanky yet prison-like apartment with Beyond by taking Marcus hostage and making him release her, MJ is one of the first people she reaches out to for help. Janine of course brings with her the valuable Beyond drive, which Ben recovered a few issues back from Doc Ock, but chooses to keep from Beyond when he learns just some of the dark secrets that are hidden on it, discovering why Beyond really chose him. It seems now that Ben has been taken by Beyond and kept from Janine that she rightfully expects the worst, and only trusts MJ and likely Peter to help both her and Ben Ben at this point. Number 3. Making villains. It doesn't just seem like Beyond is focused on developing superheroes or in conducting cool and sometimes disturbing experiments either. It seems as though they are specifically baiting and perhaps even creating their own villains for some reason. It's possible they want to lure in villains to get samples so that they can create their own superpowered beings, be they villains or heroes. It's also interesting how whenever Ben Reilly has gone in to face a threat as Beyond Spider-Man, such as his first encounter with him going up against the UFOs, he is always perfectly outfitted to handle whatever powers he'll be facing, as though they know who to expect. Possibly because the villains themselves are being hired by Beyond to attack so that Spider-Man can defend against them. After all, the fight with the UFOs in issue 75 was also what ended up leaving Peter Parker's Spider-Man in a coma, while Ben's suit had already been specifically created to survive the specific types of attacks being thrown his way. Coincidence? I don't think so. Number 2. The Obsidian Star. The Obsidian Star power source seems to be something that Maxine Danger, the head of the superhero development department of Beyond, really wanted. It makes me think that Danger is looking to get grants and turn Beyond into a company that fronts like S.H.I.E.L.D. but really just uses their superheroes to mine the field for valuable resources, which they can then use to develop other inventions for the mass market. They're basically finding a way to turn superheroes into money-making devices. Either way, the Obsidian Star would then likely be a valuable asset to them if it is a massive power source, as I imagine. We see it appear in issue 78 Point Bay of ASM, or Point B if you prefer. As I said in part 1, the tie-ins are important for this story, and I really do recommend that you read them all. They're also quite good. They're really fun. They're good tie-ins. You should read them. This one features a team-up flashback tale from Misty Knight and Colleen Wing, the Daughters of the Dragon, who are working for Beyond to help train Ben and battle some beasties for them as well. They were sent to receive the Obsidian Star, but after recounting their adventure, claimed that they didn't find it or retrieve it, though the flashback reveals otherwise to us readers. Instead of giving it to Maxine, they entrust the Obsidian Star to Spectrum, aka Monica Rambeau, who will likely return with it in issue 92 Point Bay as suggested by its cover, which was revealed in the solicits. Number 1. Maxine Danger. While Marcus, who works for Beyond, seems like an overall okay guy who often means well and is trying to do what's right for both his own team and the corporation, Maxine is the opposite in terms of that balance. She is basically all corporate. In fact, if this were Cyberpunk 2077, I would definitely classify her as a corpo. Actually, I might make a corpo character just based on Maxine. That's how much I like her. She doesn't care a tiny bit what anyone thinks of her. She is demanding when it comes to her expectations and very unforgiving when it comes to those who disappoint her. She is intimidating and powerful, acting solely on the behalf of the Beyond Corporation and their best interests, and her own best interests, and doing anything to protect the company that she represents, even possibly harm or permanently alter her employees. And I have no doubt that not even the law or morals would get in the way when it comes to her getting her way. Or ethics. She seems very unethical. What have your favorite Spider-Man Beyond moments been? Are you reading along? Are there any old Parker outfits or looks that you hope are brought back later in this story? Let us know in the comments below. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight. Till next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.